Yeah.
So you're probably
I know. I
C.
put
Radovich.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We appreciate it very much. There's a pot of coffee brewing in the kitchen if anyone's interested. It's $4 a cup. Nope. Tonight's city council meeting is called to order. I kindly ask our distinguished city clerk to please take the roll call.
Chuck Brown.
here.
Mike Bruno.
Here.
Don Cummings. Dorothy Flanagan.
Here.
Dean Kilberg.
Here.
Craig Maladra.
Here.
Richard Marks.
Here.
Mary Sino.
Here.
Tom Simonian.
Here.
Ron Singer.
Here.
We begin our city council meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask our distinguished friend from Woodward, Mr. Kerfoot, to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. We jump down to item number 4, amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments this evening, ladies and gentlemen? Item 5 is the omnibus agenda. All items marked with an asterisk are considered to be routine by this city council and can be considered in one motion. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Alderman Marks makes that motion. Alderman Simonian makes the second. Any questions or comments? Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Ron Singer.
Aye.
Chuck Brown.
Aye.
Mike Bruno.
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan.
Aye.
Dean Kilberg.
Aye.
Craig Maladra.
Aye.
Richard Marks.
Aye.
Mary Sino.
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item number 10, municipal bills for payment. We kindly ask our city clerk to read the bills for consideration in the aggregate.
Bills for payment totaled $3,511,552.98.
Prior to a motion, Mrs. McKittrick, you wanted to remove one item?
Yes, I would like to remove Unimax Management vendor 2302 in the amount of $3650, $3,650. That would leave a total of $3,507,902.98.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve and pay the bills as amended by the city administrator. The individual invoices that add up to that total, minus the invoice mentioned, can be found on the city's website under in the packet for tonight's meeting.
Second.
Alderman Brown makes the motion to pay the bills as presented and amended by the city administrator, seconded by Alderman Flanagan. Any questions or comments? Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Ron Singer.
Aye.
Chuck Brown.
Aye.
Mike Bruno.
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan.
Aye.
Dean Kilberg.
Aye.
Craig Maladra.
Aye.
Richard Marks.
Aye.
Mary Sino.
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Item 10 passes unanimously. We skip down to Committee of the Whole items of business. Item 11F, as in Frank, recommend resolution number 2015-09 for authorization to proceed Illinois Route 31 Road Diet Feasibility Study submitted to the Illinois Department of Transportation, District 1. Just for clarification, this is as was amended at the Committee of the Whole meeting this evening. Any additional comments or questions from anyone in the audience this evening?
No motion on the table yet.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, yeah. Shucks. Simonian and, Marks and Simonian. Just like the Committee of the Whole meeting. Whatever. Anyone in the audience? From the dais? Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Ron Singer.
Aye.
Chuck Brown.
Aye.
Mike Bruno.
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan.
Aye.
Dean Kilberg. Craig Maladra.
Aye.
Richard Marks.
Aye.
Mary Sino.
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Motion passes with 9 affirmative votes, 0 objections, and 1 absent. Item 11G, recommend resolution number 2015-13, amending the city's downtown station area master plan to change the future land use designation for the subject realty from single-family residential to single-family residential attached, presented by Oak Creek Capital Partners.
So moved.
Second.
Marks makes the motion. Sino makes the second. This matter is on the floor for discussion. I'll defer to the city council. Would we prefer to hear from our guests in the audience or prefer to ask your questions first?
Well, audience is fine.
Let the guests speak.
Yeah, let the guests speak.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
If the developer had something different to present than last week, I think he should be given an opportunity to present it
well, we'll
first.
begin with Mr. DeGroot as always, and then we'll turn to the audience. So a brief presentation.
My apologies, I didn't know if we were going to go item by item here, but if we're considering them all as a whole, there have been some changes made to the plan since we met last week.
Kevin's got
Oh, Kevin's got it.
Yeah, he's got the control. He's in power.
It's called the new battery. It's like-
Since the committee of the whole meeting last week, the applicant has met with surrounding property owners and made additional changes to the plans. At the request of surrounding property owners, he's agreed to switch the 6-unit and 5-unit buildings on North First Street and North Second Street. So this pushes the 6-unit buildings closer to Wheeler Park and the smaller 5-unit buildings closer to Stevens Street and the single-family homes. Surrounding property owners also requested that the applicant revise the 2 buildings on North Second Street to reduce the building height. As was discussed at the last meeting, this can be achieved by altering the grade and eliminating the front porches on those buildings. That would reduce the building height of these units to 35 feet and 9 inches. The applicant's preference is still to move forward with the elevations that were presented last week and recommended for approval, but is willing to make these changes if so desired by the city council. Just a note regarding the ordinances in your packets. Due to the number of changes that have been made throughout this process and that are still being contemplated this evening, the ordinance does not include date stamped plans that we usually have in the ordinance. So we've left the dates for each of the approval documents blank. And if the city council acts on it tonight, we would just recommend that the developer is responsible for submitting a complete revised packet to the development staff for review. We would ensure that any conditions in the ordinances or any conditions placed on the plans tonight are included in those plans, and then we would insert the approved plan dates into that document and so it could be recorded with the county.
Hey, David, before you go on, can I ask a question? What is the height difference?
The previous elevation was 38 feet 2 inches. This is 35 feet 9 inches.
3 feet.
Alder Simonian?
David, with that change, that means the porches are gone?
On the buildings along North Second Street only.
North Second Street.
Facing the cemetery.
North and Second Street?
Just North Second Street facing the cemetery.
Okay,
So going back
Gotcha.
to the site plan, these 2 buildings here.
okay.
And so switching,
Alderman Bruno, one moment, please. I'm just consulting with our city attorney. We want to make certain that what we're discussing is the comp plan, not necessarily the design elements, because we are considering just item G right now.
Regarding item G, nothing has changed.
Regarding item G, nothing has changed. So let's keep focused on the downtown master plan change. We have 3 separate motions to consider tonight. So on that issue alone, or 4, excuse me, on item G, anything additional? Those are my tax returns. Anyone from the audience regarding item G? Oh, Mrs. Anderson?
Comments are kind of related to G.
Well, you have to come up and join us, unfortunately. If these are related to item G?
I can wait till H, I'll wait till.
Okay. Anyone else on item G? I believe we're prepared for a vote. A roll call vote is in order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Ron Singer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate for me at this point in time to explain my position as to how I'm going to vote?
That's certainly up to you, Alderman Singer.
I beg your pardon?
That's certainly up to you, sir. I would caution you, however, to only explain your decision as it's based on item G,
On G?
which is respect to the downtown master plan, changing its use from residential to residential attached. City Attorney Radovich, you'd like to add anything?
That's the only item on the floor, is
That's the only
item G.
item on the floor?
Correct.
I will vote yes.
Continue with the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Chuck Brown,
Aye.
Mike Bruno,
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye.
Dean Kilberg,
Aye.
Craig Maladra,
Aye.
Richard Marks,
Aye.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Motion passes with 9 affirmative votes. Item H is to recommend ordinance number 2015-05, rezoning, zoning map amendment, the subject realty from R5 2 and 3 family residential district to the R7 multiple family residential district, as presented by Oak Creek Capital Partners.
So moved.
Alderman Marks makes the motion.
Second.
Alderman Bruno makes the second. Comments or questions on item H only? Alderman Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I said this last week, but I think R7 actually gives us an opportunity to create a better streetscape. But question for Mr. DeGroot. Does rezoning to R7 doesn't preclude anyone building something compliant with R6? It could still build that three
Yeah,
unit.
it does not
It's
preclude it.
an upper limit.
The real difference between R6 and R7 is that in R6, you're limited to up to 3 attached units. R7 allows you the ability to go 4 or more. The
That's
setbacks, building height restrictions are all the same in both districts.
that's what I assume. Thank you.
Anyone else from the dais? Ladies and gentlemen from the audience, I think I'll adopt the Simonian standard of commentary. We'll begin on the left here for the row 1. Anyone in row 1? Is that yours?
I can't
Is
take
that Kilberg's?
I stole it from him, so
Oh,
I
I was
can't take
surprised that
credit
came
for
from
it.
you, 'cause I knew it was somebody far more.
Give me a little credit.
No, I forget. I can't think back 2 weeks.
My chair, I'm going to go out.
That was the
even.
Kilberg policy.
It's a direction.
Row 2, Mrs. Anderson?
Actually, I'm gonna wait till the I.
We're on the edge of our seats every time. It's like,
I want you to keep it that way.
understood. Anyone else from row 2? Anyone else in 3? Toward the back of the room. Anyone on the right side of the room? Is the council prepared to vote? Roll call vote is in order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Ron Singer,
Aye.
Chuck Brown,
Aye.
Mike Bruno,
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye.
Dean Kilberg,
Aye.
Craig Maladra,
My vote's different than it was at committee of the whole because I misunderstood what R7 meant last week. So now that David explained to me what it entails, I am in favor. Aye.
Richard Marks,
Aye.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Item H passes with 9 affirmative votes, no objections, and 1 absent. Item I. Item 11I is to recommend ordinance number 2015-06, granting a special use for a preliminary and final planned unit development as presented by Oak Creek Capital Partners.
So moved.
Marks makes the motion,
Second.
seconded by Simonian. Mrs. Anderson. And just as a preamble to any commentary provided tonight, and it's also is addressed to the council as well. As we all know, this is our 4th public meeting following the public hearing. Our hope is that whatever is presented tonight is new and it's relevant, and it's delivered concisely. And while there is no time limit on anyone wishing to address the city council or ask questions, I would ask the council's permission to perhaps guide any speakers into wrapping up if in fact the commentary becomes a little bit verbose. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Brown.
may I suggest that if Mr. DeGraff hadn't finished, we should know about any changes before we suspend the rules and allow the audience to address the question?
Well, we wouldn't suspend the rules at all, but Mr.,
I was finished highlighting the changes.
yeah. Yeah,
So the only change you presented was the,
The 2 buildings being flipped and the possibility of reducing the building height on those 2 buildings.
all right, thank you, I'm sorry.
Sure, oh, no, that's all right. Alderman Kilberg?
I would like to introduce into the public record the emails that we received over the last few days from residents expressing their concerns without objection. I would submit that for the public record.
Without objection, so accepted. Mrs. Anderson, welcome back.
Thank you. Well, again, we just want to let you know we appreciate the opportunity to share our concerns with you. I did want to make clear to you all again that we don't view this as sport. This is not something that we are eager. We appreciate the work you do at these meetings. I've been using my date night and our babysitter every week since December for these meetings, and I'd like to get back to going out downtown. So we aren't doing this for kicks. We are doing this because we really care about our neighborhood and we care about what happens on that block. The other thing I want to make clear to you is that we do not have a problem with change in our neighborhood. We do not have a problem with the idea of bringing density downtown. We are eager for both of those things. We are grateful to Oak Creek Capital Partners for their interest in developing that block. We have been eager to see that block developed, and we're thankful for the work that they're putting in on it. What we do have a problem with, though, is the density in terms of the lot coverage due to the proposed height and setback variances that fall into the PUD. We are not doom and gloom. We are not, we're not opposed to change. We just really want to see this done right on this block. We want to see the right thing for our neighborhood and for our whole community put in there. I'd like to point out that we've heard that some of the aldermen feel that our voice kind of was shown up too late in the process, that we should have had input earlier on. And I do want to point out that we did make an attempt to reach out in the summer when we noticed the surveying happening. I spoke with Mr. DeGroot on the phone, and at that time, he was only able to tell me that it was going to be row homes. He wasn't able to share the name of the developer or the plans with us. And so we tried, as a neighborhood, to be actively involved in this the moment we saw the surveying by calling the city, but we're told we had to wait until the public hearing. We'd like to point out that when you say that the porches will be removed from the buildings on North 2nd Street, the actual porch is still there. It's just no longer steps up to the porch. So the private space where a chair and maybe, a table could be put out and families could sit outside on those porches are in fact still there. They just no longer have to walk up a few stairs to get to those porches. Am I misspeaking when I say that?
It would not be a raised porch, it would just be a covered entry.
But still the same square footage of flat space to sit out on, is that correct? Is that correct, that it's still the same size?
Basically.
It is. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everyone that when, John and both Oak Creek Capital Partners was gracious enough to meet with us last week, and we appreciated their willingness to lower those units on 2nd Street, and we feel like it is not removing the porches by lowering those, by grading the land there. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everyone. The other thing that we talked about as a neighborhood is that because this is a PUD, normal standards and ordinances would not apply. And so we have asked the city to consider both burying the utilities in this development and also planting evergreens that would be green all year long to break up some of the denseness that you see, the mass of the building. The city staff did recommend that evergreens should not be planted there because that's not how things are normally done. They don't put evergreens on the sidewalk. Evergreens may impede on the sidewalk. We would argue that the lowered setback also impedes on the sidewalk, and we would appreciate the consideration of putting in some evergreens so that there is, the mass is broken up year-round there. The other thing with the buried utilities, ultimately, I know the city hopes to bury utilities in the future. We would love to request the developer bury these utilities on this block, as it seems to be a fair concession towards advancing the city's long-term plans. So that's all that I have. We would have had a lot more people here tonight, but we have three birthdays in the neighborhood tonight, and all the neighborhood dads are at a soccer game right now, and so, except for our injured players in the back row. But we really take this seriously. We are so thankful for your time, for reading our emails, and Again, we are happy about the development. We are excited that Oak Creek will work on this block. We just want to see it done right for the long-term future of our community. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. And thanks for calling out the injured soccer players. That's awesome. That's the perils of playing indoors.
It's rough. It's rough.
Anyone else on the item on the floor?
How about the injured soccer player?
Oh, there you go. What's the injury?
I don't know yet.
Oh, good Lord.
You know, just keep working through it. Kurt Byer, 124 Stevens, and also 116 Stevens. I live directly across from the proposed PUD. I think we just, we're just really looking for a couple things, as Mrs. Anderson said. We're looking for height or setback. Can we do one or the other? Is that possible? We're not looking for both. Is that possible? I mean, it's the development, I think I guess I would have to say it looked nice. Thank you for your colors again. They're still up there. And are you going to show us new colors? Those are revised.
They don't have the.
Oh, I'm colorblind. Okay. So really just height or setback. Can we work on that? Can you guys work on that as a committee here? Evergreens, that's great. I understand. There is a big, beautiful blue spruce on the corner there. And my house, actually, my sidewalk doesn't come to a corner because there was a group of trees that they actually forced the developer to go around. So I have a funky curve. So I think that might be, within reason to keep that tree there and go around it. I'm a green thumb guy. If you want me to take care of it, I will. So that's all I have to say is height and setback. That's really, and that's density. So I'm sure you guys will make the right decision. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Gentlemen, yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Brendan Casson, 2605 Fargo. I think there's been plenty of conversation on the revisements to the original plan, and going back to what the Plan Commission found, before a lot of these changes were made, they had agreed with the original plan. And I think we should listen to what they said, and considering the amount of changes the developer has made, I think that it's unfair to continue this process any further, and I think the council should vote in favor of granting these ordinance changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Anyone else? Yes. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, alderpersons. Lori Lair, 516 Ford Street. I'm a little late to this conversation, but I am a resident of the impacted neighborhood, and I feel that the development isn't quite in keeping with the character of the neighborhood as what I personally would have liked to have seen. It's not the muse, but I understand the need for development, for developing this particular parcel, a property that's been vacant for some time, so I'm fully in support of developing with residential properties. To echo what has been said this evening, that I oppose the height and setback and density of the proposal. And I look at this as the gateway into our city coming through Route 31 heading south into the historic district. And I personally just feel that I would like to see something that's more in keeping with the character of this town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura, you travel quite a bit, so it's good to see you in town, huh?
Thank you.
Are you leaving again tomorrow for other places?
This week.
Oh, are you? Good for you. Anyone else from the audience? Anyone from the dais? Anything additional on this item? Alderman, excuse me. I'll defer to Mrs. Zander. And then Bruno Maladra.
Hello all, Mary Zander, 121 Ford Street. I was going to make a comment that I think will apply to this and to further developments. I sometimes see, we have a couple developments in our neighborhood that if you look at them independently, their design, their shape looks a lot like, let's say, an Italianate building. We have one that's on 2nd Street, just south of the Butts, if you know where they are. Where if you looked at that individually, independently, not compared to the neighbor next door, it would look just like the Butts' house. The roof design is very similar. But when you see that home as it's actually built, it looks like it's a size, again, as big as that one. And I think for comparison, it may be nice to have elevations of the buildings proposed and elevations of the existing buildings next to them in height. And even, you could even have overhead looks at that sort of thing. So you can then compare, what does this really look like? The duplex that's been developed across the street from the Holshers is another example of that. It's a brick building, and if you looked at that plan, independent of how it compares in size, in scale, in scope, from that to the neighbors, to that charming old brick house that it's next to. This is down on North 1st Street. It would look fine because independently you don't have an idea of how big it is. But if you had a drawing of these things next to one another, you could get a better sense of that scope. And I think that it would apply very reasonably here and also in future developments to have this kind of a drawing so that we don't make the mistakes of having houses that need a size diet. And speaking of diets and having a pedestrian-oriented development, I wondered why couldn't, I know we have the garage parking here, but what if we didn't have 2 parking spaces in addition to the garage for each unit, not condo, but each townhouse? What if you had less than that and you wouldn't have as much square footage taken up behind each one of those? You could perhaps squeeze them in. I look at Geneva, our downtown area, on a Sunday morning. One thing I love to see is that, the church parking is all through downtown, but it doesn't impact our businesses negatively because it's shared parking. It's parking that can be used multiple times, shared. So anyway, those were my 2 thoughts. A parking diet, buildings so that they don't need a diet, and fitting better into the neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else before I turn to the dais? Alderman Bruno, Alderman Maladra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to start, just so we all understand, we've got developments like this, and there can be competing interests, and that's normal. No one's trying to beat anybody up. Everyone's got their interests, and we work together. Geneva's a pretty special place, and the work we've done to make it that. Shows that or justifies our giving particular scrutiny to these types of things. On the value of the property, I believe in a private conversation, John, you'd said a product like this, West of Randall Road, you'd sell for $250,000. I don't think it'd be quite that low. These are pretty nice, but there's a significant disparity there. Being where you're at there, that is highly desirable, and the reason for that desirability in great measure is the attention that we've given and the restrictions that we've put as a city on these properties, whether it's historic or zoning or what have you. If we didn't enforce or voice our opinion strenuously on these types of developments, we wouldn't have a downtown, and we wouldn't have Geneva. There's any number of properties that would have disappeared were it not being us pains in the butt sometimes, from one perspective. So the value of that land is the context around it. We're here as a body to protect the context of where it's being built. So that being said, you know, I'm excited for development in principle here. I like the density. I'm having a hard time between pretty unified resident feedback and pushing both parts of the building envelope with height and setback, and not being able to see it in context. You know, that's one thing that's really given me pause to rubber stamp this. Now, I'm kind of sensing, and this is kind of an open-ended question in terms of the neighborhood. You've got this on the table. Is this is this one concession satisfactory to the neighborhood? I don't think I've gotten that unified message. That's not enough in and of itself. The other issue I have, and I mentioned it before, we did a lot of interesting, or saw a lot of interesting data with the demographics and the shifting housing needs. And I think in 10 years' time, these size units will not be part of the housing mix that we want with an aging population. So at present, I haven't seen a magic bullet to make everyone happy. So at present, I'm still expecting to vote nay on this. Thank you.
Alderman Maladra.
Thank you. I want to cover two topics. First, some housekeeping. You mentioned the buried electric and you mentioned the evergreens. You did not mention staff's response to those requests, so I thought I would just put them out there so millions of people watching understand that we're not just ignoring this. With regard to buried utility, new lines, transformers, et cetera, required to feed the new development that are within the development will be buried. Anything outside of his property remains as is. To bury that costs significant funds. With regard to evergreens, the reasons that they're not allowed have a lot to do with encroachment on the sidewalk, but also have to do with the utility of evergreens in those situations. As David pointed out to everybody, evergreens are not approved plantings in the parkway for a couple of reasons. One, they grow outward at the base and crowd the sidewalk. Two, they limit visibility near intersections, again, because they grow outward at the base. Three, they are not tolerant of road salt. And four, they have a history of interfering with utility lines more than deciduous trees. I think that if we hold to the type of trees that are currently allowed, there would be a reason for that, not just that we're ignoring resident requests. But the real thing that I wanted to get to is the question, you know, Don and I agreed last week that as long as discussion is productive, I favor continued discussion. And what I'm wondering is if we've hit a point where it would no longer be productive. It seems to me that the one issue remaining is probably the core issue all along, and that is the mass of the development. It seems to me that the neighbors are pretty united in saying it's too big, that it's too dense, that the scale is wrong. And it seems to me that the developer, although he's accommodated many requests, is holding firm on his need for height and setback variances. So in order to help me make up my mind, I need to understand what Geneva as a whole gets from these variances. So this will be a question for you, John. So today we have zoning, and we have that zoning, and it's not immutable, it's not written in stone, it can be changed, variances can be granted, PUDs and things like that. But in my mind, I need to understand what we get from that change. Now, if you stand there and say, well, you know, if I have to lower the height of the building, then I have to reduce the number of the units I build, I don't really care. that's your issue. But if you are able to say, well, for an additional 3 feet in height, this is the type of product I can provide, and that type of product is something that's truly unique, I might be willing to listen to that. And for the residents, I got to be honest, as I stand on the sidewalk and I look up, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to tell the difference between 35 feet and 38 feet. I will be able to tell if the development is sitting right up, hard on the sidewalk. That's pretty hard to miss. But even that, depending on the building that I'm looking at, that might end up being an asset to our town as opposed to a detriment. So, John, for you, and I asked this question last week too, the mews are whatever the size of the mews are. And the mews seem to be our gold standard, and I want to throw this out as well. I wasn't here then, but I've talked to people in town, and everybody should realize that when the mews were built, there was community outcry asking that they not be built. So that which was opposed at the time is now proposed as our new standard. So we need to keep that just for perspective. But I asked you last week, what is it that prevents, or what is it that the community's not getting from buildings that are a dimension like the mews?
Thank you. When we started this process back in June, one of the things we first did, drew up some concept plans, met with staff, and one of the things we have done, even drawing those concept plans up, was to take, analyze, and appreciate the downtown master plan. And quite frankly, the examples for this property, the examples of product, is what we just embraced those products. So we designed a site plan, we designed homes, townhomes, that matched the intent of the master plan. We did not want to recreate the wheel, understanding that the downtown master plan, which was approved a little more than 2 years ago, took a significant period of time from a lot of people working on the plan, and then it was updated a year later. So that's kind of where we started, and it led us to this urban style row home. To achieve the 3 stories on the back elevation, you wind up with a height that's approximately 40 feet. That was where our understanding was, where staff was going to prepare the updated zoning ordinance for setbacks as well as height. Now, staff clearly gave us the option. They said, hey, we haven't started this. We're just in the beginning stages of starting this updating the zoning ordinance. And you're going to be going a little before. You're not going to have the ability to have it done before you. Maybe I made a mistake. If we let that go beyond us, maybe we'd be coming in and not asking for any of those variances because it would already be in your ordinance. We did not have that luxury of waiting additional 6 to 9 months just to start the process. So what we try to do is take what Geneva has already embraced and create the plan, working with staff, that we were all comfortable with. That's what led us to the site plan where we were at. Now, the differences with the muses, and if somebody, and I actually took a walk around town last week, the muses actually have a trench dug, and it's a landscape retaining wall in front of each unit that's roughly 3 feet down. Again, that's style over substance. Do you like it or not? To me, I don't think it's a safe thing to have in your neighborhood, but again, they're a beautiful product. We believe we've designed something that is extremely attractive, meets the current needs of the market. Where the Muse being dated and some of the other programs, they have 8-foot plates. We have 9-foot plate on the first floor and the second floor, and in the top level, obviously with the rafters, we have some volume in there. So we have floor plans as well as heights in the rooms that people want to buy. One of the things in Geneva, as well as in St. Charles, because you're connected by 31, there's very few newer products that have been built that are walk to town. And that's where Alderman Bruno was referenced, I wouldn't want to be building today west of Randall Road above 250,000. Not necessarily the same product, but right now, doing a smaller infill development piece makes a lot more sense. This has been a parcel that's been significantly underused for a number of years. And quite frankly, some communities would consider a TIF for a blighted district. We didn't ask for that. We don't think that's the appropriate way. So what we did was we tried to design something. Now, the alternative with this, and maybe as Brandy tried to explain, the front door pad area is substantially the same, but to me and to a lot of people, porches conferred, being up a couple of steps. When we met with the neighbors last week, basically they asked for us to do three things. Flip the two buildings, and I'm counting two, flip the two buildings. We were fine with that. Staff supported that. They asked if I would clarify, because I had made that comment about losing the porches to the committee hall on 2 occasions and at the Plan Commission, as well as in discussions with a number of you. Everybody's before has always said keep the porches. Now, I believe generally the porch definition is consistent with what I had. So I explained that to them. I showed them this elevation. They asked, would we consider building these two elevations on the two buildings that face Second Street? I was very clear. Staff historically had not supported that. The aldermen that I've spoken to individually did not support that. But should the council as a whole say, make this change on those two buildings, I said we would be happy to do that. You saw David's recommendation. And after we left there, we thought that was, we've addressed their concerns. They came back and asked for a few more things. Saving the blue spruce, which, again, that is your Department of Public Works call. Pulling a sidewalk around, something like Mr. Byer has across the street, something we can do. I've asked that question before, but it's not something, I can't make that call. I understand the decision on these evergreens in the parkway. I did suggest, I said, what if we, on the west side of Second Street by the cemetery, where there's no sidewalk and there's a good 20 feet or so behind the curb to work with, what if we come in and put a half dozen to a dozen evergreens, staggered rows there. Again, the reason they asked for the evergreens was the look as you drove east on Stevens, so as you looked at the front of these. That was something actually I had posed a question to engineering about 30 days ago when they were going to find the right person in charge of the cemetery to ask, would that be possible? So we continue to be willing to work with it. The product design, is high quality product design. I think, quite frankly, it'd be your best townhome program built in Geneva.
What I'm trying to understand is the question that's here. So you've asked for a height variance and a setback variance. So you bought a container that's yay big, and you're asking us to enlarge that container, and I want to know why that has to happen. What is Geneva getting with the higher
you're getting a high quality development. We based the design on the understanding of where your standards were going. Okay? Now, unlike the Muse, unlike the townhomes across the street from and a little further north, where those are generally flat fronts, here you've got significant movement.
The movement.
We would save at least $10,000 a unit if we just drew a straight front and just did a brick. All right? We've got, depending on how the buildings go together, anywhere between 7 and 10 foot of movement between units. We tried to really design each unit independently. And if I wish I brought a laser pointer, but if you look, you've got brick, and in the end unit we have the box bay. The next unit, the verticality, is pretty much all brick. So we tried to do from the street, each unit almost look like a separate and distinct unit. The Muse, the ones on Second Street, and not that I'm saying anything about the architecture, it's a straight face, it's a straight look, and other than a little gable over the front doors in some cases, there's really no differentiation of units. Here you can say, oh, if I'm not on the end unit, I am the second unit from the south with the box bay or all brick. You know, it's something trying to tie with the architecture to what you have, the porches, the independent front doors, everything we're trying to do is to tie with what Geneva has really said they wanted in the master plan.
So I actually think that's kind of valid, because when we talk about the Muse, there's 7. And they take up whatever, a quarter of a block or a half a block or something like this. In this case, we're talking about an entire city block. We're talking about as many as 30 units, but, you know, to be rational about it, what's the fewest number of units we'd be looking at here? A lot more than 7. So when we think about that uniformity and we expand it out to 30 units, it starts to get monotonous and it looks like a big monolithic box. I've been here long enough to remember when we were arguing about the big box retail stuff as being a giant negative for the community. Well, big box residential is no more, in my mind, not a whole lot different. So this question is new for you. I haven't asked you, but I talked to David about it at a fair amount of length because I was trying to understand the product that we were trying to evolve and how it fits in with what I perceive to be the vision of the town. So if giving, you know, from where we're at here, assuming that, as Alderman Bruno asked, this is what people find satisfactory, I see us giving up a raised porch, which to me is different. This is a covered patio in front. We still maintain, I'm guessing that there's still that movement across this.
What we have on that movement, just so you understand, we have 3 basic floor plans, an A, B, and C.
Right.
And the way we're achieving that movement is each unit has different depths. So as we put the buildings together, we can do that by doing an A, a B, a C.
Yeah, you explained that last week.
Yeah.
So I'm giving up some things here, and again, as I said, as I stand at the sidewalk, do I notice the perceived difference in height? On paper, we've gained a win. Yeah, we got them to come down 3 feet. But in reality, what does it mean to me as I stand on the sidewalk? And I'm not sure I understand yet how much that is.
And again, we talked about last week, each of the gables on the front elevation or front plane, all of those are below 35 feet. The only place we get above 35 feet is at the peak. Now, this corner, and this was drawn with the, earlier on, but you can see behind this corner gable, right behind it, that one is 14 feet back from the front plane and 14 feet from the side. And then the next point that gets up above 38 feet is actually 20 feet beyond the plane of the unit. So it's back, and again, we're having this movement, so it's, you know, depending on which unit you're at, you could be back a little further.
So then, my last question, for now anyway, is what is the highest we're looking at here?
I'd have to look at the exhibit I gave you. I think it was 38 feet 2 inches.
Okay.
And the one thing I do want to point out, because it is done in some of the other products, we did not try to put a false foot or 2 foot retaining wall behind the sidewalk just to make a definition work. We're trying to be upfront with you so everybody understands. I mean, we could do that, and it's being done here in town right now. That there's a false retaining wall, and the height's still over 38 feet.
So, thank you. In relation to where I started, and the question I have is further dialogue productive? If the residents will accept only a reduction in mass, and if that reduction in mass results in a uniform, monolithic, big box type of residential development, I don't see the continuation as getting us anywhere anymore. That's all I have for now.
Anyone else on the dais?
Boy, do I know how to kill a conversation.
Anyone object? Mrs. Anderson, please?
Just if I could respond to that, I think when you use the term big box residential, I think that no matter how much movement is on the front of these, this is exactly how we would describe big box residential. So I would disagree with you on that.
Well, you can't, because it's my term and I had a vision in mind.
This is.
I understand where you're
This is
going.
my definition of big box residential right here. So, and when I feel like, John did not answer your question about why does he need the height variance or the setback variance. I do not feel like those questions were answered. Again, and I'm going to say it wrong, it's like where the PUD ordinance talks about it being a right to be earned and not a privilege to be granted. And there's just to us, I think why we're holding strong on this height and setback variance, to us, it's big box residential no matter what. That whatever, if he stays to the setback, if he stays to the height, it's still big box residential to us. But he's followed the zoning that our city has laid forth for our neighborhood, as we all are also doing in our historic homes. And when you say, what does he gain by having those extra 3 feet? Well, what he gains is not spending the money to grade the ground to build.
I never asked what he gained. I asked what we gained. What
Okay,
does the
but,
city
okay, well then I would say that he didn't answer your question. The city, he didn't answer your question. Why should he be granted the setback and height variances? How has he shown that those are required? And I don't think that was answered in his.
Well, the way I took it was that with the variances, we get the movement across the facade, we get raised porches, we get gabled roofs. And I know I got jumped on for saying this last week, but I am not an architect. So I could take the position and I could challenge him on that, and I could try and argue with him and say I could get that in a smaller space as well. But I don't know that. At some point, I take the architect's word.
I believe you all saw my email where Mr. DeGroot did say that even under our 6 zoning with the 2-unit buildings, or 3-unit buildings, that it was possible for him to still get 28 units on the block under our 6, with the current no variances.
Right.
So he would still be able to get as many units as we have now. Again, we don't have problems with the number of units. And I don't see where he explained, the movement.
What I heard was
yeah.
movement, raised porches,
Okay.
and gabled
And
roofs.
I would say movement, raised porches, and gables can happen on this block without those variances. Maybe it means a few less units, maybe it means less green space in the center or less parking, but I am certain that movement and gables can happen without the variances.
Yes, Lori.
Just a few additional comments I want to make. A question, can our neighborhood, this area, support more attached homes? Just looking at the vacancies in the condo development on River Street, it does cause concern for me that we're building more attached homes. And I'm sure you've looked at this, I'm not personally aware, but do the sales of existing attached single-family homes north of Route 38 support this type of development? Can these homes be sold at the price point that they're suggesting?
Do you want an answer to that, Lori?
I don't know.
Because obviously, we can't give you an answer. That burden, that risk lies with the developer. So, anyone else from the audience?
I'm sorry, one last thing. When you say that risk lies with the developer, that was mentioned in another meeting, and what we feel like is that risk, yes, lies with the developer, but is that risk is given by you, by the city council, that our neighborhood is put in jeopardy when these units don't sell and they become rentals or they don't get built. And so we would say, yes, that risk is on the developer,
Let me ask a quick
but it will
question,
greatly
Mrs.
affect our
Anderson.
neighborhood.
What's wrong with, and this is not the case,
Yeah.
but let me just throw this out there for the purpose of debate. What is wrong with rentals?
I wouldn't say anything's wrong with rentals when it's the idea that, when it's the idea that they were meant to be sold and they're hoped to be sold, and then they aren't go unsold. So they languish unsold, and then they eventually become rentals. I don't think that's ideal for the neighborhood, particularly when this block could be so desirable as it was designed in the downtown master plan. And so people want to live downtown. People buy a house just went up on 3rd Street right in our neighborhood that got a contract on it in one day. I mean, this block is desirable, and the risk is not just with the developer. The risk is on us, and the risk is on you as well, so.
Alderman Bruno?
To the point of movement and based on designs, you've got 3 basic floor plans, each different sizes. So if, let's say, no one's interested in A and B, and you just sell a bunch of Cs, that becomes a more uniform facade?
The C unit is 23 feet 6
Well,
inches wide. The A unit is 24 feet wide. And we're going to have comparable floor plans, so we can mix and match. What you've got is the preliminary floor plans. There will be significant movement. The 21
Even
foot.
if everyone buys the same,
They won't,
size.
because you're going to be able to control that by pricing. Your B unit, which is the lower price, is going to start approximately 40 to 50,000 lower than the A and the B unit.
so the demonstrated movement is,
That demonstrated movement's going to be pretty darn close to what you have.
thank you.
Alderman Flanagan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At one point, you told us that the footprint of the building could change, could not get larger, but it could get smaller in density,
Smaller in width,
in width.
yes. And we
Okay,
committed
so
to that, and that's one
This
of
is the
the,
maximum.
yeah.
that we're
So
looking-
if the actual mixes that we programmed to show the movement on the plans were built, all the 6-unit buildings come in 7 foot, the 5 units come in 6.5, and the 4 units come in 6 feet from what is shown on the landscape plan. We committed to that building 5 to bring it in right from the get-go.
Right,
The reason,
that was where the-
the reason why the landscape plan and all the plans were drawn at 24-foot width gives us total market flexibility.
Right, that's
And
what
we
I
were willing
thought.
to give it up on the one building.
And if you did go with, there was something about the height, you would end up having smaller units, wouldn't you? To the point,
No, the height does not change the size of the units. The size of the units,
will always remain somewhat.
they're generally about 1,900 to 2,100 square foot of living space on the 2 main living levels. There's an option to finish the basement area, which adds about 400 square feet, and then there's a landing.
I know you mentioned something about elevators. Could this particular building where you don't have the porches be an ideal candidate for elevators to be put in so that a different element of purchasers can live in it? In other words, someone that would
That's not
not
going to
necess-
affect the decision one way. Most people will be coming home through the garage. We do intend to offer an elevator option on the wider 2
Okay.
units, not on the
I just
narrow
was,
unit.
I mean, I like the porch element, but, I mean, I could live with this if it helps bring down the size
Yeah.
of it, so.
And again, this was an olive branch.
And I don't think evergreens would really make it either, because I've seen evergreens where the bottoms have been chopped off because
So
of the
that
fact.
typically happens
yeah.
with your pine
So
trees.
I don't think that they would look really attractive.
Anyone else for the dais? Alderman Kilberg?
Just had a couple of thoughts as we sort of wind down here this evening. I think the big thing about this is that we get one pass to get it right. And whether we accept the fact or not, this does become somewhat of the new standard as it relates to R7 in our community. And I think over the last few weeks, we've all heard a number of people address the council in regard to Park Place. And over that period of time, I have yet to hear, other than one voice this evening, advocate for the development and said that it's time to move forward. Obviously, there are council members that have spoken favorably in regard to certain aspects of the development, but it's pretty much the developer standing here alone this evening, as well as prior evenings as we've had this discussion. We're the voices from our constituents that are supportive of this development as currently being presented. I have yet to hear from them and their voice of support. Has the opposition or those people that are speaking on behalf of the historic district, are these residents that have an axe to grind for any specific reason? I don't see it that way. I think that they're expressing some genuine concerns. I think these are residents that have made a significant investment in our community. They take pride in their homes. They have an investment that they're concerned about and they want to protect. As the residents approach the council and voice their opposition in a reasonable and constructive way, I would say that they were all civil. I don't think it was a personal issue. I think that they were expressing concerns that they held deeply. The answer that I would have to say then is yes, I think they've been reasonable, they've been constructive. Has other governmental bodies spoke in support since the development would generate major property taxes for the community in the future? They've spoken, but only to the extent that they'd like to see it proceed in an equitable manner for neighbors and residents and taxpayers, for residents and taxpayers alike. If we want to, somewhat go this alone, I feel we are drawing a line somewhat in the sand, and that future developments of this type within the city could lead to a more organized and more vocal opposition in the future. And we all know that there are certain things that are on the drawing board, and that if you feel as though we have had a sense of pushback over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think we're going to have more in the future as it relates to this type of development where there's infill involved. Development within Geneva, we all agree, can be very positive for the community, but it needs to be collaborative with those that are already residents needing to have their voice fully heard and their concerns fairly addressed. In closing, it is very likely that this development will probably be approved and proceed tonight. But we all need to be aware that with this, with the next development that is brought forward, it could well lead to even greater debate and even more resistance within the community. And I think this is something that we may not be taking an appropriate look at. And again, I think that the developer, we certainly welcome them to our community. I think, though, that the issues or the concerns of the residents as it relates to height, setback, and density, I think are legitimate concerns, and ones that if we concede now, is this going to put us into a position in the future where we're going to have to concede as well? So with that, that's really my position and my comments as it relates to this.
Thank you. Anyone else on the dais? Are we prepared to vote? Alderman Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As someone on the council who voted for the Muse and voted for the James Street apartments and voted for the new condos on 2nd Street next to the parking deck and the riverfront condos, which I like and would like to move there. And as someone who drives down Stevens Street from the west every day, driving east to bypass the city traffic in the morning during rush hour, I come down the hill past the factories, past the cemetery, and I don't see in my eye, when I visualize this, I don't see this sitting out as some monster on the horizon at all. I notice as I'm driving down Stevens Street that many of the houses on my right have very small setbacks. Some of them are grandfathered, I suspect. I don't see this as much of a lurking megalith that most people seem to think it is. I think it looks to me as nice, if not nicer, than the ones I've already approved on the council. And I think it will sell, and I think it will bring some people to town that will help our downtown. For years, I and everybody else in the council has talked about making sure we have density downtown, that our downtown is hanging on by its fingernails like every other downtown in the United States that's being overwhelmed by the big boxes that tend to sit out on the major highways. As I visualize this, I see something that to me will look reasonably nice once we get used to it, as we did with the Muse, as we did with the James Street's apartments, and there's going to be more sitting on 7th, the James Street condominiums, excuse me, and the ones on 2nd Street. And also with respect to these porches, whether or not this building is another foot higher to make a one-step porch or another 2 feet higher to make a two-step porch, I happen to have a one-step porch. When my wife and I sit on it and banter with the neighbors that walk by, it's a porch. It's delightful in the afternoon. We do that. I think that's, that to me is, the builder is the one who's putting his money at risk here. He'll have to decide on that particular issue. I really think that following on what I've done on the council for 25 years, which is approve infill downtown, improve the opportunities. I was chairman of the infill commission, and we worked on trying to develop more people downtown. It's worked. We've had some very nice infill. I just don't see any reason that we should be putting ourselves in front of the developer and saying no, when he's the one who's purchased the property. The owner of a property does have the right to the highest and best interest of the property. I am going to vote yes for this tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Byer?
Please. Okay. The owner of the property doesn't need the variance or the setback. Why do we have to give the variance? Can you build this development without the variances?
Mr. Byer, I believe, respectfully, I believe that question's been answered through considerable dialogue between Mr. Maladra and the developer. I don't think
You just mentioned the height. I'm talking about the setback and the height.
Unless the council overrules me, I don't think it's appropriate to engage in a one-on-one with the developer regarding that particular issue. That's been addressed.
Can you ask that question, Mr. Mayor?
It's been addressed multiple times. I know it's been addressed at the Plan Commission public hearing. It's been addressed.
That was 9-0?
Pardon me?
That was 9-0?
Correct.
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 So there's a problem with the process, maybe, Mr. Mayor?
I don't think so, sir. No.
Okay.
I think the process, irrespective of whether the process works in whomever's favor, it's the process. I think we can all find reasons to criticize the process, but the process works the way it's supposed to. Everyone has an opportunity to address.
It came here last week, and it was a 4-6. So it went from 9-0 from planning, came to the cow, it's 4-6. So obviously, our voices could have been heard a lot earlier, and maybe we wouldn't be sitting in this position we're in.
I can't comment on that.
Okay.
I mean, I know that the council members and their intelligence, their integrity, and their thoughtfulness have considered all that matters. Obviously, I know Mrs. Anderson and others have sent correspondence to all of us. That correspondence has been shared with professional staff. Professional staff have provided all of us with responses. I can only speak for myself.
So to be clear, and what I got from our exchange, so my question was, if we grant these variances, what does Geneva get? The answer is movement across the frontage, gabled roofs, raised porches, but I also omitted rear garages and open space on the property. So I do believe that I asked the question. I do believe that I got an answer. The question is that sufficient to justify enlarging the size of the container that he bought?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Last chance. We're voting, excuse me, on Item I, ordinance number 2015-06, granting the special use for the preliminary and final planned unit development as presented by Oak Creek Capital Partners. A roll call is in order. Mr. DeGroot?
I want to make sure that the motion either does or does not include the revisions to the buildings along North Second Street.
That does not include the revisions.
Okay.
That's correct.
Does
This picture shown here is an option that was considered. Both professional staff and the developer have indicated in public meeting that this is not their preference. I think we've heard tonight that raised porches are what we prefer, if I've heard
I do have,
correctly.
well, I would like to follow up on Mr. Bruno's question, because the developer took the time and the neighbors took the time to work this out. If this is something they've agreed to, I don't see the need to step back from it. Do we have agreement? No.
Mr. Lozinski, it's my impression that you did not agree to this. You provided it as
No.
Forgive me. Excuse me.
When we met, and I documented that meeting in email to David, we said flipping the buildings we would do, while we would prefer to stay with the raised porches, trying to be good neighbors like we have been through the whole process. We would build buildings 4 and 5 on Second Street with this elevation, because that was one of the things they asked for. So if it was the wish of the council, and that's what we're looking for direction on, if that is your wish, we will agree to it. If it's not your wish, we will build with the raised porches.
I wish I was in Hawaii. Can you just, it was flipped, never mind.
I hang on the word prefer. Your preference is to build with the raised porches. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Does the council concur, without a vote, just a consensus that their preference is the raised porches? Because if you think otherwise, we're going to need an amendment to this item in order to change it to depict what we see here.
So what I think is we asked them to work together. They worked together, this is what they came up with. To dismiss this at this point, why did we ask them to work together to begin with?
So the residents are in agreement that they like this?
For buildings 4 and 5.
Cemetery Street, Stevens Street.
Right.
I tried to suggest that there were some possibilities in between, like maybe not a 4 to 5 step porch, but a 1 or 2 step porch on this, split the difference and et cetera.
But I don't even understand
I think it would make a
that.
more saleable
This is
product
just for one
myself.
street.
Yeah, I don't, so
Second.
alls I'm getting at is, we asked for discussion.
Sure, absolutely.
This is the outcome of that discussion.
Make an amendment to
It's,
accept
I
this.
don't know what disingenuous means.
I am not pushing the
For us to
council
back
one way or
away.
the other, but what I've heard is, from both the developer, is prefer. You would prefer to build this with the raised porches, and I've heard from professional staff in their memorandum that the recommendation for consistency of product is to have the raised porches. Is that incorrect? That is correct, okay.
Did you in good faith discuss with these people? Did you in good faith
Good
agree to
faith,
this?
we did.
Oh, yeah, I
In
think-
good faith, we
Sorry.
said.
That's okay.
What we did, we told them very upfront, when we had talked about this alternative before with staff, as well with a number of aldermen, the other elevation with the raised porches was preferred.
I agree.
I said, and I put it in writing, should the council say it's okay to build buildings 4 and 5 this way, we will absolutely do that. If you wish us to do the raised porches, we will do that.
The essence of compromise is that at some point, somebody's doing something they would not prefer to do. I think this is a compromise.
The motion, Mr. Mayor, the motion on the floor reflects the set of plans that were recommended
At the committee of the whole.
at the committee of the whole. So as a consequence, if these modifications that have been tendered tonight are to be incorporated into an ultimate vote, then there needs to be an amendment to the motion on the floor reflecting
This is a condition.
those changes, and a vote on that amendment first to be
Prior to the
incorporated.
main motion, right.
Correct.
So
Well, I personally, Mr. Lozinski, go ahead.
The flip of the buildings, David did include in the resolution. So
Correct.
the only one we're really talking about is this alternate elevation for buildings 4 and 5.
Except the resolution refers to what the committee of the whole's action was, not what Mr. DeGroot may have incorporated in tonight's packet, with all due respect to Mr. DeGroot. So, there's two revisions that need to be made in the amendment.
What are the two? Sorry, I know the one.
David, if you want to restate that for the benefit of someone that may want to make that motion.
So the two changes since the committee of the whole's recommendation last week was that the buildings along North Second Street and North First Street would be flipped. The 6-unit buildings would be pushed to the north and the 5-unit buildings would be pushed to the south. And then the second amendment would be to make the buildings along North Second Street 35 feet 9 inches tall by changing the grade and eliminating the raised front porches.
Flipping those buildings doesn't actually move them any further.
Well, it takes actually an amendment to include both elements, but I would like to say, just for the record, since I haven't said much, I agree with everything Mr. Kilberg said. I think the dialogue between the developer and the neighbors has been great. It's been wonderful. But when I look at this particular rendering, respectfully speaking, I see a Hampton Inn because of the raised porches not being part of that element. I think the raised porches says, to me anyways, neighborhood. When we look at the Mews, imagine the Mews without the steps going up. It'd be a different product. But that's just me. So, I will now be getting more coffee. You guys can have a debate. I mean, obviously, it's open for discussion, so.
I agree, but I wasn't questioning the elevation specifically. I was questioning the process, what I called last week the Geneva Way. The Geneva Way for Dodson Place, for almost everything that we've done since I've been involved is to discuss and to hammer out compromise. And that's what we got here. And we're looking at this compromise. For us to go through that process, weeks and weeks of discussion, et cetera, and then say, you know what you guys compromised on, forget it.
But ultimately, the decision boils down to us.
Oh, I agree.
So
So I just want to throw the motion, I would like to move that we amend this to include the building flip and the elevation change for the buildings on Second Street.
The elevation the building flip is understood. That's very technical terms.
Yeah, the flip.
That's understood, but the elevation is compliant with the reduction of height, which requires the elimination of the raised porch.
Which,
On one street.
on one street,
Second
which
Street,
perhaps, and I would also challenge you to get a porch in there with the limited height, but, so, yes, that's what the amendment.
Is that your motion?
That's what the emotion.
That's your motion to amend item I, 11I. Is there a second to that
Yes, there's a
amendment?
second.
Alderman Sino offers the second. This is on the floor for additional discussion if you'd like.
Then, Mr. Mayor, there'd be a vote on the amendment to
Correct.
see whether it merges with the main motion on the floor.
Anyone? Mr. Clerk, a simple majority will carry the day. This is on the amendment only.
Ron Singer,
Aye.
Chuck Brown,
Nay.
Mike Bruno,
Nay.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye, because I think I want to support the neighbors in this.
Dean Kilberg,
Aye.
Craig Maladra,
Aye.
Richard Marks,
Nay.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Nay.
The motion passes with 5 affirmative votes, 4 against. So the motion as amended is on the floor. That motion includes the building flip. And on Second Street, the elevations as shown, which apparently ran out of juice, didn't pay our utility bills, it's now off, so.
Is it not possible for the mayor to vote when his vote could change the outcome?
Yeah, well,
It would make it,
I was gonna consult with the city attorney on that, so. One moment.
You do have the ability to.
If it's a tie, it dies, right?
Yeah.
They just put it Alderman Brown is correct. I do have the opportunity to vote. The vote currently is 5 in favor, 4 against. I vote against the motion. The motion is therefore defeated. Back to the main motion, unamended, is on the floor. Item I, on the main motion, as it stands on the agenda. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Point of order, I
Mr.
just have a
Simonian?
question. Is this, now, does this include the flip?
No, we voted the flip down.
Okay, but I would,
Well, yeah, that can be offered now.
okay, I'd like to make a motion that the flip be amended to include the flip.
Second.
Motion by Simonian to flip, seconded by Alderman Sino. Discussion on that? Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Ron Singer,
Aye.
Chuck Brown,
Aye.
Mike Bruno,
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye.
Gene Kilberg,
Aye.
Craig Maladra,
Aye.
Richard Marks,
Aye.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
The motion to amend passes 9-0. We have the main motion as amended on the floor. That's item I, parenthetical with the flip. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Simonian, seconded by Marks. Any comments or questions from the audience?
You already have you have a motion.
It's-
You-
yeah, it
it's
was
already- you
Mark's.
already
Oh, excuse
voted.
me, we already have the
Marks and
motion.
Simonian already have the motion.
Right, right.
Main motion, which has been
Which
now
has been amended.
amended.
Exactly. So,
So the motion is on the floor as amended.
any comments or questions? Mr. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Ron Singer,
Aye.
Chuck Brown,
Aye.
Mike Bruno,
Nay.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye.
Gene Kilberg,
Nay.
Craig Maladra,
Nay.
Richard Marks,
Aye.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Motion passes with 6 affirmative votes and 3 against. We move down to item 11J. Recommend resolution number 2015-14, approving cash contributions to the Geneva Park District and Geneva School District in lieu of land. Is there a motion to put this on the floor?
So moved.
Alderman Maladra makes the motion. Alderman Bruno makes the second.
Mr. Mayor, under the terms of the subdivision control ordinance, for this motion to prevail, it would require 7 affirmative votes of the alderman holding office.
Any comments or questions regarding item 11J?
Does that include
Does the mayor vote in this?
Mr.
No.
Frederick?
No?
From the audience?
It's 2/3, the ordinance requires, or the code requires, 2/3 of the alderman holding office.
Thank you.
How does?
From the dais?
Pardon me, how does Alderman Cummings fit into that?
He doesn't vote, but he's holding office. He constitutes one of the 10 that would be holding office. So
that
you
would
need
be
7, 2/3 of 10 is 7.
Got it.
I did graduate from Geneva High, but,
That was before Common Core and new
yeah,
math.
before, I don't know what that means.
Or new math.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
true, too.
Any comments from the dais? Oh, Mr. Simonian?
Can we table this until Alderman Cummings is part of this vote?
Any motion is subject to table to a date certain,
I'd like to.
provided that, and the motion to table would require a simple majority.
I'd like to make a motion to table this until we have a full body of councilmen or councilwomen or.
We need a
to-
date certain.
To, when's the next city council meeting?
We can have a special one next week as early as the 23rd, if you'd like.
Okay, 23rd, date February 23rd.
So everybody's going to be here?
It
We'll
would-
double check, and we can always offer another motion. But motion to table to the 23rd, offered by Alderman Simonian. Is there a
Second.
second? Requires a second. Alderman Sino?
And the motion to
No
table is
discussion?
not
No debate?
subject to discussion.
Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Ron Singer,
Nay.
Chuck Brown,
Nay.
Mike Bruno,
Nay.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye.
Gene Kilberg,
Aye.
Craig Maladra,
Aye.
Richard Marks,
Nay.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Mayor has the opportunity to vote, half the aldermen vote.
Gotta earn those bucks now.
Can I make a comment?
Please do.
It's not debatable in this.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I'll take my lead from Alderman Simonian. I'm uncomfortable in doing so. I believe we have not only done the appropriate thing, I think that this is not, what has been considered and voted on at the Committee of the Whole is not in any way, shape, or form precedent-setting. And I have faith that the council understands that, and I have faith that those who voted the way they did last time will certainly...
On the table, you're voting on the
Right,
table.
exactly. Vote that same way again tonight, so I will vote nay. Motion's back on the table. Comments or questions from the audience? From the dais?
Can I say something now?
Of course.
Just so people understand, the only reason I made that motion was because of the majority requirement. In any other instance, a councilman being not present, in my opinion, doesn't have any, shouldn't influence our decision-making, but in a majority of the total council versus the total council present, I think it behooves us not to allow that, since that person is part of the calculation of the majority, that person should be here as well. And that's the reason I made the motion. Thank you.
But you're only in the vote of the tie. You're not one of the...
Question.
Alderman
Affirmative
Wilder.
vote indicates that we favor the credits being granted, correct?
Correct.
Got it.
Anyone in the audience from the dais, are we prepared to vote? Mr. Clerk, will you kindly take the roll?
Ron Singer,
Aye.
Chuck Brown,
Aye.
Mike Bruno,
Aye.
Dorothy Flanagan,
Aye.
Dean Kilberg,
Nay.
Craig Maladra,
Aye.
Richard Marks,
Aye.
Mary Sino,
Aye.
Tom Simonian.
Aye.
Motion passes 8 affirmative votes with 1 objection and 1 absent. New business? None? Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Marks, seconded by Flanagan. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. Tom?